Great. Well, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Fantastic session this morning. I'm really happy to be a part of it. Want to share a little bit about the work that we're doing as part of the Wired Center and in collaboration with the Wilkes Center for Climate Science and Policy on climate risks to the grid, communities, and ecosystems. So, of course, context, climate extremes are rising rapidly. This varies based on where you are in the country. We see this every summer, every mountain highway you drive, every power line you walk by. You can see the risks in the landscapes around you. Of course, climate change is supercharging a number of these. This is, some of the latest maps on fires burning and smoke traveling throughout North America. Compared to the 70s, the wildfire season is now longer, burns 6 times as many acres and 3 times as many large fires. And we know that climate change is not all of the story, but it's a significant part. So this is a beautiful study that does this attribution to about half of the area burned in the Western US is due to human-caused climate change itself. The other half is really this complex network of, or set of drivers around fuels and land management, fire suppression. So why do we need forecasts going forward into the future? Clearly, this is going to pose substantial risks to power infrastructure, to communities, insurance and property values. And there are both direct risks of actual infrastructure and people's lives in harm's way, but there are indirect risks through smoke and health and other health impacts. This should, and we hope, can help inform land management. Where ought we to be prioritizing prescribed fires, fuels treatments, defensible spaces, community planning? And it also ties into climate policy itself, which is that there's a huge amount of interest in leveraging ecosystems for nature-based climate solutions. And we have to be able to quantify what the risks are to those and be able to plan them in places where they will actually last and not go up in flames. So some of the core questions that we've been doing is really, what are these projected risks in wildfire? We also look at drought impacts and insect disturbance. And then can we potentially fold these into these atmospheric models to also make smoke projections and smoke forecasts? And I'm talking several decades into the future. Obviously, near-term weather is very important, but if you're thinking about insurance values or where to site infrastructure or how to manage forests, understanding the risks decades into the future is incredibly helpful. How do these affect the risk to the grid and to property values? And how can this guide forest management and improve our risk mitigation approaches? So just to give you a quick flavor of a project or two, we recently did some work building historical and future fire risk models from satellite data, drought and insect-driven tree mortality disturbance from these long-term Forest Service plots. We downscaled some of these same climate models, 6 Earth system models, to 4-kilometer resolution, including these detailed hydrological models. We did this extensive amount of model testing and cross-validation, and now we're working in collaboration with folks in the Wired Center around smoke transport and a lot of the smoke projections going forward. Just to give you a sense, so this is some of the initial results of this project. These vary, of course, by climate scenario and where you are in the US, but of course, fire risks are projected to rise quite dramatically, especially in high climate change scenarios. You see this particularly in California, in the West, and the Southwest. These other disturbances like drought and insect-driven tree mortality, we really see ramp up in the Intermountain West and the Southwest. Here's just a map version of that last panel. And this is going from left to right, from a low to moderate climate future all the way to a high climate future. And you can see, of course, that the fire risks are much, much higher in a high climate scenario than a moderate. And still important changes, but not quite as dramatic in these other two disturbances. We've been now starting to overlay this with a lot of socioeconomic data. So this is actually now property values. We did a study looking at how is the exposure to wildfire, to drought, and to insects likely to increase across property values. And this is for the contiguous US and different regions. And you can see that in different climate scenarios, so the red bars are the high climate change scenarios and the blue bars are the low to moderate scenarios. It's expected to rise a lot in coming decades, 2 to 3-fold. And we can actually then start to make maps of where does climate policy to reduce climate change reduce the risk and the amount of property values exposed. happy to talk about this more if we have time for questions. Just want to put in a quick plug for the center that I direct, which is the Wilkes Center for Climate Science and Policy. We're incredibly excited to be a partner in this Wired Center. And our goal is really to get cutting edge science into the hands of decision makers and accelerate practical climate solutions. We have a summit every May. You are all warmly invited to that summit. It will be next May, and usually around May 15th. So keep an eye out for that on our website. And just one final note to leave you with is we've been working on developing and rolling out some of these projections as tools. So this is an initial tool we built with a nonprofit called Carbon Plan around these 3 different risks and their projections. You can zoom in and click and then play forward these risks into the future in these different climate change scenarios. So this is now, you're walking through an integrated century of fire, drought, and insect risk. And then you have the ability to zoom in. So we're going to now zoom in to Western Colorado, and you can then start to draw circles and download the data for individual polygons. This is the goal, to try to make this data useful for stakeholders and collaborate with stakeholders. So this is just an early example of a type of a tool that we've been building. With that, just a quick few notes on how I see AI and cyber infrastructure playing in, since that's also part of the title of this session. I think there's a lot of potential for improving fire and disturbance models and ingesting these large satellite data sets, atmospheric models, and both improvements in speed and accuracy. Chemistry and smoke transport are some of the areas that this is being applied to already. This ties really nicely to the Wildfire Center and, understanding the regional optimization and prioritization of how we can take these risk mitigation actions. And then, as has been nicely touched on this morning, early detection, early warning systems, and rapid response systems. Related to that, there's an X Prize challenge going on right now. You're probably aware of this Wildfire X Prize challenge, and the University of Utah will be hosting one of the X Prize summits in October. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested in joining. With that, thank you very much, and I'll turn it over.